Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. This is episodes 15 and 16. I'm going to do them both in this one of building a Scrapbuster idea book. And I apologize for not getting that video in yesterday, but my granddaughter was with me and she didn't want me to make a video. So, okay, 15 and 16 are, 15 is a stacked pocket and a button spot. And 16 is a concertina book, Wendy Townsend inspired, and a Tracy two-side, Tracy Fox inspired. But the Tracy two-side I showed you how to make on episode 6 when we were looking at scrap pads. So I'm going to show you, for the idea book, I'm going to do both pieces. Both will be included, a scrap pad and then the Tracy two-side, and I'll show you the difference. And actually, I'll start with that. A scrap pad can be the same paper or different paper. But the idea is that it's generally a one-sided piece and it's not designed to fit over the top of a page. Like, see here, this is just a scrap pad. I've got a pocket on the back so it can be two-sided, but it's not designed to fit over the top of a page. And however you make it, whether it's, you know, different sides like this, it's all the same size, cut to the same size like this, or, you know, just random bits. A scrap pad is with any kind of paper, coffee dyed or leftover bits and pieces and such. And it's made generally into a single-sided piece. So that's a scrap pad. And I'll show you real quick how I do those in just a moment. But the Tracy two-side, which is actually today's item, I really showed you how to make in episode 6. And the reason that that's different is because this is designed to fit on over the top of a page, on 2 pages. So if I were to grab a piece of cardstock, because of the way the top is folded and hinged, one side is to fit on one side of your page and then the other. The scrap pad piece is to go on the other. So episode 6 is really the Tracy two-side because I show you how to make the two-sided over-the-top scrap pad. Whereas a scrap pad is generally designed to, you know, a lot of times I'll just tuck these into a pocket or put them on a half a page or a bottom of a page or a flip up underneath a page. And they're essentially designed to be not something that goes over the top. And again, you can do it with random bits or all of the same bits cut to size. And a couple ways that I do this are, I will grab a whole bunch of paper, whatever it is. Like you can see, this isn't all the same size and it isn't all, like this one's folded over on the edge and whatever. And it's not perfect. But what I do is I line it up on one side and then I'll use one of the clips like this to hold it. And I'll run it through the machine. And I do that because whatever, like here, I'm going to use this piece of cardstock for it, right? Well, it's not the right size and it's obviously not going to fit. But I've got them all in the same spot. So I can either, this one's thin enough, I can use my standard trimmer. But if it was thicker, I'd use my rotary cutter. And I can, when I'm done, just trim down the excess. And let's see, this particular scrap piece is 3 inches. So I want my scrap pad to be 3 inches. And or just a little bit less. I like to have a little bit overlap on each side. So I can trim it afterward and I know it'll be held in place because I've got this stitched piece on top. It's already held in place and it holds nice and tight while I'm trimming it down. And because I'm not done yet, I'm going to come in and put the top bit on, right? Like this, I'm going to put this top bit on. It doesn't matter that I just cut off the edges of my thread because they're going to be recovered anyway. And then here I can trim it down to whatever the smallest size was. And again, if it was thicker, it was a thicker pad, I would just use my rotary trimmer. And now I can fit these pieces together, right? Like this. And I'll fold this over the top. And you can see there the writing is upside down. Well, I can just fold it right back if I want to. Or I can just trim it off. Like you can see here, I've got it so that it wasn't as bulky. And I hinged my edge. Let's just say I'm going to hinge it right here. I don't know where I'm going to actually hinge it, but we're going to just call it right there. Hinge it. And then what I do is where I've folded it over or hinged it, I'll come and just put a little bit of glue so it holds it in place. I mean, I can use the clips as well but I'll put a little bit of glue to hold it in place. And of course I couldn't do it like that because that would be not me. Let me ink that real quick. And I'll glue this here. I'm going to pull it up a little bit. Glue it like so. Okay. And then I'll put it on straight. That's one of the reasons I like that reptile glue, because it does give me a little bit of grace. Okay, let's see. All right. Excuse me. And that's not straight either. Okay, if I weren't tired, it would be on there straight. And maybe I just need to do it like that. All right, put it on, and then I would open it up and sew right along here. That actually, I won't leave it like that because that's too thick for this. I would make this a little bit thinner. Excuse me. Make that a little bit thinner and come in with this and actually put it down where it belongs. Let's do this correctly. All right, now I could go on my machine and I could sew a straight line here, or I could sew a zigzag or what have you, right? And then I will trim off the bottom, hopefully straight. And that's my scrap pad, all right? And I can do it just like I did here with it, you know, nothing behind it, just an actual pad, or here with a bit of cardstock. I can do a straight stitch. I can do a zigzag stitch. But the reason I do it that way is I'm going to hide that piece anyway, and it just holds my paper tight while I'm trimming it. And I know that it's going to line up straightly. It just, straight. It just saves me a step down the road. So scrap pads. The Tracy two-way scrap pad was really episode 6. And then there's this. All right, moving on. Let's see. What did I say? Stacked pockets. All right, I do stacked pockets 3 ways, and I'm going to try to link the episodes of Flips, Flaps, and Folds where I actually show them, because I'm not going to reteach them. But stacked pockets is something I generally do with scrap book page or scrap paper. This is one version of a stacked pocket. Now this is a bigger piece, so obviously I didn't use scraps, and it's got a back tuck, but this is made with scraps of book page, basically, or ledger, or any kind of paper. But it is what I call a stacked pocket. And the nice thing is you use bits and pieces and scraps to build the whole thing. So this would be one of my 3 versions of my stacked pocket. And I think that's episode 3, but I won't swear to it. But I will try to link them below. This is what I consider a stacked pocket. This takes book page, and you can, and I think in the episode I show, you can use random different colors of book page, or you can use the same dictionary page almost always, and then just put some washi at the top to make it a bit stronger. But this stacked pocket is another thing I do with scraps. And then the last stacked pocket is another episode, and again, I will try to flip it. No, I will try to link it below. And this, again, this one's different book page, and I showed in the video how I folded it and why I folded it that way, just to give you a little bit more edge. But this is also a stacked pocket. So when I say stacked pockets, you can do 1, 2, or 3 for your idea book, and completely up to you how big you want to make them. But remember, I am going to be using, you use any size, but I'm going to be using the 6x6 squares from the Tim Holtz 12x12 that we cut down to kind of continue the 3x3 squares, the 3x4 rectangles that we made into the mini journals, and then the 6x6 squares. I'm going to be using the 6x6 squares to build the completed Scrapbuster idea book. And I don't know if they'll have 3, 2, or 1 because I haven't put it together yet, but it's going to at least have one of the stacked pockets. And you'll be able to do the same thing whether you use this version of the stacked pocket or one of the other two versions. So that is stacked pockets. Button spot. And I dug through my stash and I have almost no button spots. So I will show you. This is the one and only one that I had. Now they can be made on fabric or on paper. And you can certainly use rectangles or squares or whatever you like. But I tend to make them in square or rectangle shapes. I tend to make them differently than I do clusters because I use them differently than I use clusters. But this is all a button spot is. And, oh, these were on that other page. They're trying to confuse me, which is so not difficult today. All right, let's see. This little button spot will have a piece of paper, and it really is as random as this. I have a little bit of vintage lace and such that I hadn't put away yet. And then this is my little itty bitty scrap bin once I've cut down a bit of lace. And I use this quite frequently to do little bits and pieces. Well, this looks like it's peeling up, so I don't know if I'm going to use that. But this piece of fabric looks like it'll work just great. And maybe a little bit of lace. Here, this piece of lace sounds good. So I will just kind of randomly lay these. And again, these are square-ish, rectangle-ish. And I usually use 2 to 3 layers, but sometimes I'll use more. I like this fabric. That's kind of cool. Let's cut a little bit of that off. And if it doesn't work and I end up not liking it, I'll just make it go away. And oh, look, I've got these little itty bitty bits in front of me. Maybe I'll do that. All right. Well, look, maybe I should zoom in so you can actually see what I'm doing. I'm just layering these little bits. And like I said, they can be a combination of paper and fabric and lace and any of those things. I'm using these simply because I haven't put them away yet and they're out on my desk. These are some vintage mother of pearl buttons I got in Snohomish, Washington. There's it's kind of a cute little town with all kinds of antique stores, and one of the booths had some vintage laces and buttons and such, and that's what I did. So do I want to put the button in the middle of there? That button's too big for that little bit, so I won't use that little bit. Maybe I'll just put the button there. But that button looks kind of sad and lonely by itself, so maybe I'll put a number there or something like that. And that's all I do for a button spot. I just kind of make them. A lot of times I'll put labels or numbers or something, and then I'll put some Nouveau Crystal Glaze on top of that. And I normally have a stack of these, a little bag or a bin and stack of these, and so I can just grab them when I need something, just a little something to put on a page. And these buttons aren't super thick, so for these type of pieces, I generally don't use thick buttons, but you could use paper buttons if you wanted to. And personal preference, I sew them all together and on, but you can certainly glue them if you like. I just like to see the actual, like some of these have the thread in the buttons, and I always consider that a win because then I don't mind gluing them on. But otherwise, I just sew it in. And that is what I call a button spot. It can be 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. It can have words. It can have numbers. It can have a quote. But it's usually square or rectangle, and it has a button on it. And it almost always has a little bit of lace or ribbon or trim of some sort. Something that I've grabbed from this bin and just put on top. So that is a button spot. And the Tracy Two side I went over. Oh, concertina book. Wendy Townsend. And I will, again, try to link her video below. And I gave these away too. But basically what she did is she took offcuts of paper, and this happens to be lined paper, but offcuts of any paper, and she made them into an accordion fold. And she put like a little itty bitty mini belly band on it. And this belly band, I goofed and it was not cut straight. It was a scrap of something. So I just covered it up where they met. So you can't tell that I goofed. You can't tell that they weren't straight. Now, I don't remember Wendy's video. I should, but I just don't. But it was great. It was a super idea and a great video. So I will link it and you should watch it. But I don't know if I don't remember if she eyeballed or if she scored. What I'm talking about with that is to score your pages or your edges. If I'm doing an accordion mini book for a journal and the spacing needs to be precise, well, then I'll use a score pad and I'll measure. Or if I'm doing an accordion style book, the whole book itself, rather than just the binding, I'll use my score pad. But for things like this, I generally don't. I kind of wing it, and I'll get a piece of paper. It can be plain coffee dyed paper, it can be notebook paper, and it's almost always, oh here, looks as a great size. It's almost always an offcut, right? And personal preference, only personal preference, because generally I get a better fold. I get it to line up a little bit better. I fold the piece in half, and then, just again, depending on how long it is and how many I want, I fold each half in half, right? Each half gets to go in half, simply because I get it to be a little bit straighter. Now, if you do something different, that is a-okay. And then you just accordion fold it. I match the first one up to that first fold line. It just helps me keep the line spacing even, right? And then fold it back, and then flip it around and fold it back. And see, I find this part just, you know, to be a little touchy. You just kind of have to play with it and feel it a little bit. And fold it back. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just kind of a little enclosure that you stick in a pocket. It's extra journaling space. And just having those pre-folded lines helps me to make it straight, especially when I've got as many folds as I've got here. All right. And this last one is not super straight, but that's okay. That's a fixable thing. And I can, you know what? I can always do this. Watch. And cut that off if it's not as straight as I'd like it to be. But I don't think the paper was cut perfectly straight. All right, and there is my little concertina. And then I get a small scrap of cardstock, and I generally ink the edges simply because I like that. But if you don't, then don't ink the edges. And let's see, time, reaction, and delay report of engine and train employees. Oh, okay. I will wrap it around wherever I want it to go. And I like that, so I am going to just snip it off right there. Now you can stop it right here. You can stop it at the edge. You can, you know, like I did here, put just a tiny, tiny little scrap of lace and a ribbon on it to hide the edge up. You can leave it plain. You can put some of those little itty bitty Tim Holtz ephemera, the snippet, I think, or tiny ephemera, or whatever it is. You can put something on there, or you can just leave it like this. And then you tuck it in a pocket, and that is a concertina. And then you don't make it too tight. I just fold it over, and it seems to work just fine, so that you can take it on and off for a writing space. And that's the concertina book. All right, that's the 4 items today. The Tracy two-way that was really on episode 6, but the scrap pads, the stacked pockets, I showed you 3 ways, the button spots, and the concertina. All right, tomorrow, Monday the 17th, will be the last of the 2, and we've kind of gone over them before, but not really. So I'll show you those, and I will also include the entire list, because I think the list will make more sense, and the reason I'm including it now, because you know what each piece is. Whereas if I had just put like this list out right now with a Tracy two-way, you'd be, huh, what? What is she talking about? What's a Tracy two-way? Well, now you know. And I don't know that it's actually called a Tracy two-way, but that's what I call it, and that's what it's listed on as my notes. So Monday, tomorrow, I will put the new video out, and then it'll probably realistically be Friday or Saturday before I show you the video on how I put it all together, because I haven't worked out all the details of that yet. I've been finishing up the journals, and I've got one last one to finish up of the 3x4 journals that we made, and personalizing those. So I've got one of those to finish, and then I will focus on finishing up the scrapbook idea book. All right, if you've made it this far, thank you very much. I'm glad to have you along, and I hope you're enjoying the process. Take care and happy creating.